The air on Phyron 7 had the acrid scent of burning metal and ozone, a smell that permeated everything. The battle between the Androlian Empire and the human forces had been fierce, the two sides locked in a bitter struggle for control of the strategic mining colony. The Androlians, a race of towering, blue-skinned giants, were known across the galaxy for their advanced weaponry and disciplined military tactics. Yet, as the dust of the battlefield settled, it became clear that something was wrong. Corporal Lena Hayes stared out across the war-torn landscape, her boots sinking slightly into the ash-blackened soil. The once thriving mining complex now lay in ruins, smoke rising from the twisted wreckage of Androlian battle mechs and human tanks alike. Her pulse thudded in her ears, a mixture of adrenaline and disbelief clouding her mind. How had this happened? The humans had done what they did best, they adapted. They improvised. They fought smart. She glanced over at Sergeant Marcus Mackthorne, who was wiping soot from his face with one hand while cradling his rifle in the other. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the last of the Androlian forces were retreating into the dense jungles. Despite their superior firepower, the aliens had been outplayed in a way they hadn't expected. A way that made Lena grin despite the circumstances. "Good job, Hayes," Mac said, his voice rough from the dust and smoke. "You brought us through that mess." Lena gave a half-smile, shaking her head. "You know it wasn't just me. It was the team. Everyone pitched in. They'd been trained for this kind of thing. The Androlians had underestimated them, assuming that human ground forces would crumble before their superior technology. But humanity had something the Androlians hadn't accounted for: creativity. The ability to adapt in the heat of battle, to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. It was a skill they'd honed over centuries of war, and it had turned the tide on Phyron 7. Lena felt a hand on her shoulder, and she turned to see Lieutenant Colonel Jackson standing behind her, a wry smile on his face. "Nice work, Corporal," he said. "But I think we're about to find out why you don't want to mess with human armies." Before Lena could ask what he meant, the ground shook beneath their feet, and a deep, guttural roar echoed from the jungle. Mac's eyes went wide. What the hell was that? Jackson didn't flinch, his face a mask of grim determination. "That," he said, "is the Androlian Empire realizing they made a very big mistake." And then the skies darkened, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The Androlians had been retreating in an orderly fashion, their massive armored mechs and gunships pulling back into the jungle, where their superior numbers and equipment could give them an edge. It was a well-timed withdrawal, designed to preserve their forces while they regrouped. But that roar, it wasn't a weapon, not one they had ever encountered before. No, this was something else entirely. "We've got a problem," Jackson muttered, glancing at Lena. "One of their big toys just woke up." Mac grimaced. "Big toys? I've seen their mechs, but this is different, right?" "Different doesn't even begin to cover it," Jackson said, his voice tight. "That's a war beast." A war beast. Lena had heard the term before, but she didn't fully understand what it meant until she saw it for herself. It came crashing out of the jungle, its massive form tearing through the trees like they were paper. Its forelegs were thick and muscular, each one ending in claws that dug deep into the soil as it moved. Its body was armored, but not like any Androlian vehicle she'd seen before. No, this was something more primal, something that seemed to exist solely for destruction. Its head, a massive skull with glowing red eyes, swung from side to side as it howled again, sending waves of sound that rattled the human soldiers to their bones. Lena's heart skipped a beat. "That thing is enormous." "Enormous and angry," Mac muttered. "What the hell did we just wake up?" Jackson turned to his team, his expression hardening. "We deal with this the same way we've dealt with everything else: we adapt. We improvise. We survive." The war beast took another step, and the ground beneath them trembled again. Lena's mind raced, her training kicking in. She'd seen battle mechs, alien soldiers, and all manner of destructive technology in her years of service, but this was something entirely new. It was the first time she had truly felt the weight of the saying, "You never fight human ground armies." Human armies didn't just fight, they fought back, using everything they had, and then some. Lena's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the situation. The Androlians had underestimated them once. It wasn't going to happen again. But as she looked around, it was clear they didn't have a lot of time. The war beast was drawing closer, its massive jaws snapping with fury. If they didn't act fast, they would be the next victims in the Androlians' misguided attempt to conquer human forces. Back at their position, the team quickly regrouped. Mac checked his rifle, while Jackson pulled out a holopad, analyzing the movement of the war beast in real time. Lena's mind was already working, searching for any kind of advantage they could exploit. "We need to draw its attention away from the rest of the unit," Lena said, thinking out loud. "We need to lead it into a trap." Jackson looked up from his pad. "We don't have enough time for a big operation. It's too fast, and it's not stupid. This thing will hunt down every soldier if we don't act now." Max swore under his breath. "So what, we just run at it and hope for the best?" Lena ignored the sarcastic tone, her mind spinning as she thought about the environment. The dense jungle might slow the beast down, but it also provided cover for the humans. They could use that to their advantage. "We're going to hit it with everything we've got," she said, finally settling on a plan. "But we're going to need distractions, lots of them. And I'm going to need someone to draw it out of the jungle." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Are you volunteering for that job?" Lena smirked. "You can't expect me to ask someone else to do it when I'm the one with the plan." Mac chuckled darkly. "Well, this is gonna be fun." As the team began to set up their position, Lena's mind raced with the possibilities. She was calculating risks, estimating fire patterns, and predicting the war beast's movements, all in a split second. Her confidence came from years of experience, but this was different. She had never fought anything like this before, not even close. And yet, there was something familiar in the way she approached the battle. It was human instinct, pure and simple. And she wasn't going to lose. The war beast's growl echoed again, closer now, its massive form looming at the edge of the jungle. Lena's eyes locked onto the creature, adrenaline pumping through her veins. This was the moment. It was time to show the Androlians that, despite their terrifying arsenal, they still hadn't figured out what made humanity truly dangerous. "We're not done yet," she muttered under her breath. And with that, the battle for Firon 7 had only just begun. Lena's heart hammered in her chest as she crouched low behind a pile of jagged debris. The ground still trembled from the war beast's advancing steps, each one closer than the last. She had never faced anything like this before, but the fear didn't paralyze her. No, it sharpened her focus. She had a plan, and it was time to put it into motion. Behind her, Mac and the rest of the team were setting up their defensive positions, their weapons ready. The Androlian Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve, but that was the last mistake they would make. Lena looked over at Jackson, who was kneeling beside a pile of wrecked mechs, staring intently at the holopad in his hands. "What's the status on the war beast?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It's getting closer. The thing's as fast as it is big." "It won't take long before it's in our range," Jackson replied, his face tight with concentration. "We need to move quickly or it'll stomp over us before we have a chance to react." Lena nodded, already mapping out the terrain in her mind. There was no way they could fight the war beast head-on, not without overwhelming odds in their favor, and right now, the odds weren't in their favor. But they had a chance, just a slim one, if they could use the environment to their advantage. "All right, here's the plan," Lena said, turning to address the rest of the team. "We're going to split up. Mac, you and 2 others will stay on defense. Keep the Androlians occupied and draw their attention. The rest of us will move toward the riverbank and try to flank the beast. The jungle's thick, and it'll slow us down, but if we can get around behind it, we'll have a shot at taking it down." Mac raised an eyebrow. "You're asking us to lure it into the jungle? Are you out of your mind?" Lena's lips curved into a tight grin. "Yeah, but we've got no choice. We either make it come to us on our terms, or we die. You're the best we've got, Mac. You'll keep it busy long enough for us to set up our angle. Mac stared at her for a moment, chewing on the inside of his cheek, and then, to Lena's relief, nodded. All right. Just don't make me regret it. Never, Lena said, her voice firm. With the plan in place, the team began to move, the adrenaline in their veins spurring them forward. The air around them was thick with smoke and dust, the sound of distant explosions still ringing in their ears. But Lena didn't focus on the noise. She focused on what was next, surviving. That's what humanity did best, adapt, survive, and push back when pushed to the edge. The war beast was closer now. It had emerged from the jungle like some ancient, unstoppable force of nature, its massive claws tearing into the ground with each thunderous step. Lena could hear its growls echo through the trees, and every instinct in her screamed that they were running out of time. They were getting into position, creeping through the dense undergrowth. The thick foliage was both a blessing and a curse. It would hide them from the war beast, but it also slowed their movements. Lena motioned for her team to keep quiet as they crawled forward, hearts pounding, eyes fixed on the colossal predator. Mac, status? Lena whispered, her breath shallow as they approached the riverbank. Mac's voice crackled through the comms. It's coming right at us, Corporal. I've got the Androlians distracted, but this thing's not slowing down. You better hurry. Lena's eyes darted across the jungle, her mind racing through a dozen scenarios. She had never been in a situation like this before, outgunned, outnumbered, and facing a creature that seemed to have no weakness. But then again, humans weren't known for their brute strength. They were known for their brains. Just get to the river, Mac, she said, her voice steady. We'll handle the rest. The beast was nearly on them now. Lena's team had reached the riverbank, their boots sinking into the soft mud as they scrambled to find cover. Lena's mind was already calculating their next move. They had no heavy artillery to deal with a target this massive, and their rifles were barely a match for the thick armor that covered the war beast's hide. But they had something more valuable, knowledge of their enemy. Humanity might not have had the raw firepower of the Androlians, but they had ingenuity, and that was a far more dangerous weapon. All right, here's the plan, Lena said, gathering the team together in the shadows of the trees. We're going to need to get close enough to make our shots count. There's a weak spot at the base of its neck, right where the armor meets the spine. If we can hit it with concentrated fire, it'll give us a shot at disabling it. Mac's voice came over the comms again, the strain in his voice apparent. You think you can hit that weak spot? With all the crap in the way? I don't think we have a choice, Lena said. Mac, you keep the Androlians occupied for as long as you can. Don't let them get close. We'll handle the rest. She could feel the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. They had no backup. There was no reinforcements coming. It was just them, the jungle, and a massive, angry war beast. Lena and her team crept forward, staying low to the ground, their breaths coming in shallow gasps. The war beast was nearly within range now, its massive form looming over the jungle like a living nightmare. Lena's mind was laser-focused as she surveyed the creature's movements, each step it took sending shockwaves through the earth. On my mark, she whispered, pulling out a grenade from her belt. We hit it with everything we've got. They waited, the seconds stretching into eternity. The war beast's glowing eyes locked onto their position, and Lena could see the flicker of recognition, an intelligent animal, calculating its next move. It had already noticed them, and now it was coming for them with terrifying speed. Now! Lena shouted. They opened fire in a blur of motion, the noise deafening as the team unloaded everything they had into the war beast. Lena's rifle kicked in her hands, her eyes fixed on the weak spot at the creature's neck. The first few shots bounced harmlessly off its thick hide, but then the grenade exploded at the base of its spine, sending a shockwave through the creature. It howled in pain, its massive body jerking back in an attempt to shake off the attack. But Lena wasn't done yet. Keep firing. Don't let up, she shouted, her voice carrying over the chaos. The war beast roared, its glowing red eyes narrowing as it turned toward them with a fury that sent a chill down Lena's spine. It was angry now, and its rage only made it more dangerous. The earth shook as it charged toward them, its claws leaving deep gouges in the ground. Lena knew they didn't have much time left. She needed to get one last shot off, the one that would finish this once and for all. And she needed to do it before the war beast made them its next victims. And then, just as the war beast lunged toward them, Lena's rifle roared. Her aim was true, the round piercing the weak point in the creature's neck. The war beast froze mid-strike, its massive body trembling, then crumpling to the ground with a deafening thud. For a long moment, there was silence. Lena stood there, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the adrenaline started to wear off. They had done it. They had actually done it. But the battle wasn't over. The Androlians were still out there, and they were about to find out just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to the brink. The moment the war beast collapsed to the ground, there was an eerie stillness in the jungle. The monstrous creature, which had seemed unstoppable moments before, now lay motionless in the thick underbrush. Its massive body, riddled with gunfire and the marks of the grenade explosion, had finally fallen. The victory was hard-won, but there was no time to savor it. Not yet. Lena exhaled, the tension of the last few minutes flooding out of her system. She took a moment to steady her breath, eyes scanning the jungle around her. The war beast was down, but the real fight was far from over. The Androlian forces had already regrouped, and they would be coming for them. Mac's voice crackled through her comms, strained but triumphant. We got their attention. The rest of the Androlians are circling back, but they're confused. They didn't expect this. Lena didn't let herself relax. The Androlians weren't about to just slink away after losing their biggest weapon. They would be angrier now, more determined to wipe out every last human soldier on the planet. They had already underestimated humanity once, and now they were going to pay for it. She glanced over at her team, and she could see the weariness in their faces, but there was no fear. Not now. We need to push them before they regroup, Lena said, her voice tight with focus. Mac, hold the line. I need you to buy us time while we move in on their command post. If we can disrupt their coordination, we'll throw them off balance. We take their comms, their leadership, and the rest of their forces will fall apart. Understood, Mac replied, his tone fierce. We'll keep them busy. Just get it done. Lena turned to Jackson, who was already preparing a small team to flank the Androlian position. Let's move. We've got one shot at this. The jungle, once a place of thick shadows and heavy foliage, now felt like a labyrinth. The air was thick with the scent of burning trees and the smoke from the war beast's final moments. The team moved swiftly, keeping to the underbrush as much as possible, staying low to avoid being spotted by Androlian scouts. The noise of battle echoed in the distance, but Lena's mind was fixed solely on the task at hand. Every decision, every step, was crucial. Lena glanced at her team. They were tired, wounded, and outnumbered, but they had something the Androlians didn't: sheer determination. The humans had been fighting for their survival for centuries, and this was just another chapter in that long, hard story. And with that came a special kind of resilience, the kind that could not be broken by overwhelming odds. Stay sharp, Lena murmured to her squad. They'll be expecting us to break after taking down their war beast. They'll think we're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are. As they made their way through the jungle, Lena's thoughts turned to their next move. They would need to sabotage the Androlian command center, which was likely hidden somewhere deeper in the jungle. If they could neutralize the leadership, the Androlians would be like a headless snake, fighting, but without purpose. They crept forward, Lena's eyes scanning the trees ahead. It wouldn't be long before they reached the clearing where the Androlians had set up their makeshift base. They had to act fast. If the enemy leaders got wind of their movement, they could easily call for reinforcements. Lena knew that the success of this mission hinged on speed and surprise. But there was something else in the back of her mind, a nagging feeling she couldn't shake. The Androlians had shown they could adapt quickly. The warbeast's fall was a significant blow, yes, but it wouldn't be the end of their resistance. The real question was whether the humans could capitalize on this momentum before the aliens adapted to the new threat. "We're close," Jackson whispered, his voice barely audible. "We've got to move fast before they realize we're coming." Lena nodded and held up a hand, signaling her team to halt. They were within striking distance. Ahead, she could see the faint outline of the Androlian command structure, an array of heavily armored tents and vehicles surrounded by a tight perimeter of soldiers. Lena's mind raced as she analyzed the layout. The perimeter was too dense for a direct assault, but there was a gap in the coverage, a vulnerable spot that could provide them a way in. "This is it," Lena muttered. "Jackson, take your squad and move to the west. We'll hit them from the east." She turned to Mac. "How are things on your end?" "I've got their attention," Mac said, the sound of gunfire and explosions in the background. "We're holding the line, but we won't last long if you don't make it quick." "Don't worry," Lena said. "We're going to finish this." The team split into two groups, each moving quickly through the dense foliage. Lena's squad made its way toward the eastern perimeter of the Androlian base, careful not to make a sound. The air was thick with the tension of the upcoming confrontation, but Lena pushed her nerves aside. Her mind was focused. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the chance to cut the Androlians off at the knees. As they approached the clearing, Lena could hear the faint hum of Androlian tech, their communication systems and automated defenses. They were close now. Too close for comfort. Lena motioned for her team to halt, and they crouched low, their rifles aimed at the Androlian sentries guarding the perimeter. Lena's eyes flicked from one guard to the next. They were distracted, overconfident after the loss of their war beast. That was their mistake. They thought they had everything under control, but that was about to change. "On my mark," Lena whispered, her voice steady. "We move in, silent and fast." She counted down in her head. 3, 2, 1. The team exploded into action, moving like shadows in the jungle. They sprinted toward the first sentry, taking him down silently with a well-placed shot. Another sentry went down in the same manner, and soon the perimeter was breached. Lena's pulse quickened. They had broken through. Now they had to stay in control. As they advanced on the command center, Lena's comms crackled. "Corporal, this is Mac. We're in trouble. The Androlians are bringing up reinforcements, fast. You need to move, now." Lena's stomach dropped. Reinforcements meant they didn't have much time before the entire Androlian force came crashing down on them. She nodded grimly to her squad. "Push forward. We need to neutralize the command center, now." The Androlian command post was a flurry of activity, soldiers moving in and out of the reinforced structures as they prepared for a counterattack. Lena's team fought their way in, cutting down guards and disabling the communication relays as they went. Then they reached the central command tent, a large, reinforced structure surrounded by guards. Lena took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the final assault. This was it, the key to ending the fight. "On 3, she said. 1, 2. But humanity didn't break. It fought. And it won. Before she could finish, an explosion rocked the clearing. A massive shockwave threw them off their feet, and Lena's vision blurred from the blast. She heard gunfire erupt around them, followed by the distinct sounds of Androlian mechs advancing. The explosion hadn't just been a distraction. It had been a declaration of war. Lena pushed herself to her feet, her hand instinctively reaching for her rifle. The fight had just escalated in a way they hadn't expected. Now, it wasn't just a matter of neutralizing the command post. They had to survive long enough to make sure the Androlians never had a chance to regroup. "Stay sharp," Lena shouted to her squad. "We're not done yet." The battle raged on, but Lena's resolve never wavered. The Androlians had made a fatal mistake. They thought they could break humanity. They thought they could overwhelm them. But humanity didn't break. It fought. And it won. The smoke from the explosion hung thick in the air, the acrid scent of burning foliage and scorched metal stinging Lena's nostrils. The battlefield had become a chaotic nightmare of gunfire, shouts, and the hum of Androlian mechs advancing with cold precision. Yet, despite the odds, despite the overwhelming force arrayed against them, the human soldiers stood their ground. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she wiped the blood from her forehead, barely feeling the sting of the cut. She didn't have time to think about it. Her mind was laser-focused on survival. "Form up!" Lena shouted to her squad as they scrambled to regroup. "Mac, what's your status?" Mac's voice crackled over the comms, strained but steady. "We've got Androlian mechs coming in from the north. They're not giving up. We've got about 5 minutes before they overwhelm us. Can you make it to the command center?" Lena scanned the battlefield, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the approaching mechs, massive, armored machines of destruction, towering over the jungle like gods of war. If the Androlians hadn't learned their lesson before, they sure would now. Humanity didn't break in the face of overwhelming odds. "We'll make it," Lena said firmly. "Hold the line for as long as you can. We're going after their command structure." "Roger that," Mac responded, the sound of gunfire intensifying behind him. "Good luck." Lena didn't waste another second. She turned to her squad, motioning for them to move out. The Androlian command post was in sight, but the path to it was more treacherous than ever. The explosion that had thrown them off balance was just the first of many blows the Androlians had prepared. The terrain had become a minefield of enemy fire, with Androlian mechs in pursuit. "Go, go, go!" Lena barked as they moved swiftly through the dense jungle, darting between trees and wreckage. Her mind raced with plans and counterplans, every move calculated, every breath a deliberate choice. The Androlians were relentless, but they still hadn't figured out what made humanity so deadly. They reached the outer perimeter of the Androlian command center, the reinforced tents and structures looming ahead. But the road was anything but clear. Androlian soldiers were everywhere, their rifles scanning the jungle with sharp, calculating eyes. Mechs patrolled the perimeter, moving with the precision of a deadly machine. "We need to be ghosts," Lena said to her squad, her voice barely a whisper. "No mistakes. Stay low, stay quiet. If we're seen, it's over." The squad moved as one, slipping through the underbrush like shadows, avoiding the sentries with a practiced ease that came from years of training. Each of them knew the stakes. They were no longer fighting for territory or power. They were fighting for survival. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They made their way to the command center's outer defenses, where Lena stopped to survey the situation. A quick glance told her what she needed to know: there were too many enemies for a direct assault. But they didn't need to attack from the front. Lena's mind raced, calculating their best move. "There's a back entrance," Lena said quietly. "Jackson, take the west flank. Draw their attention. The rest of us will go in through the back. We've got one shot." Jackson gave her a sharp nod. "Understood." As Jackson and his team began moving to the west, Lena and the rest of her squad slipped around the back of the command center. The heavy metal door to the rear of the structure loomed before them. It was guarded, but not nearly as heavily as the front. Lena's fingers moved with practiced ease as she worked the door's security panel, bypassing it with a small device. It took only a few seconds before the door slid open, revealing the dimly lit interior of the command center. She motioned for her squad to follow. Inside, the command center was a hive of activity. Androlian officers, draped in their imposing uniforms, barked orders into holocomms, seemingly unaware that the human forces were already inside. It was a perfect opportunity. Lena moved quickly, her squad fanning out to secure key areas of the command center. The last thing they needed was to be caught off guard by a surprise attack. Lena crouched down beside a console, her fingers flying over the interface as she initiated a quick override of the base's communication systems. The screen flickered before her, and the console hummed to life. "Got it," Lena said, exhaling in relief. We've got control of their comms. Now we cut off their reinforcements. Nice work, Mac's voice crackled in her ear. We're holding the north perimeter, but it's getting tight. They're pushing hard. Just hang on, Lena said. We've got this. The command center was a fortress, but it wasn't invulnerable. With their communications disabled, the Androlians were beginning to panic. The officers' shouts grew more frantic, and Lena could hear the stomping of mech boots as they closed in on the facility. Lena's pulse quickened. They had only one shot at this. She looked around the command center and spotted the central holotable, the main hub of Androlian military strategy. She knew that if they could disable it, they could cripple the entire operation. She nodded to her team. We need to take that holotable out. Now. But before they could move, the door to the command center burst open, and Androlian soldiers rushed in. Lena's heart leapt into her throat. It was too soon. There was no time for hesitation. Lena and her squad opened fire, their weapons blasting away the Androlians with pinpoint accuracy. The enemy soldiers returned fire, but the humans had the advantage: surprise, speed, and the element of chaos. The Androlians had underestimated them once, and now they were paying the price. Lena moved swiftly, darting toward the holotable with her squad covering her. They reached it, and Lena knelt down to set the explosives she'd packed. The timer was set. 5 seconds, she called out. Go! Jackson shouted over the comms, his team engaging the remaining enemy forces outside. The countdown ticked down, and then, boom. The explosion rocked the command center, the shockwave rattling the walls as the holotable went up in flames. The Androlian Central Command was now in ruins. Outside, the sounds of battle began to fade. The Androlian soldiers were scattered, disoriented by the loss of their command center. The mechs, no longer receiving orders, faltered, their movements erratic. The humans had broken their enemy's spine. But the battle was far from over. We've got the comms down, and their command structure is destroyed, Lena said, panting as she spoke into her comms. Mac, fall back to the rendezvous point. It's over. Understood, Mac replied, the relief in his voice palpable. We'll be there soon. As Lena and her squad made their way back through the jungle, the sounds of battle slowly died behind them. The jungle, which had once been a place of danger, now felt almost peaceful in comparison to the chaos that had just unfolded. When they reached the rendezvous point, the rest of the team was already there, waiting. Mac, covered in grime but with a grin on his face, slapped Lena on the back. Well, that was something, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Never thought I'd see the day we took down an entire Androlian command post with just a handful of people. Lena smirked. Never underestimate humanity. The sound of the shuttle's engines roared overhead, a signal that their extraction was imminent. Lena looked around at her team, their faces battered but triumphant. They had done it. Against all odds, they had taken down the Androlian Empire's best. And they had done it together. As the shuttle descended toward them, Lena took a deep breath. She knew they hadn't just won a battle. They had made a statement. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And the Androlian Empire had just learned that lesson the hard way. We're going home, Lena said with a smile. And for the first time since the war began, it felt like they had finally won. Reason. Search.